Hi, and welcome to a new episode and a new season of the FM channel podcast. I'm Claudio. I'm also one of the owners of Alex Young Recruitment. And today I'm joined by Alistair Scott. Thanks for taking the time to come on, Alistair.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
No, pleasure. So before we go into it, I just want to kind of remind people, because I did the podcast, started it about 4 years ago, did it for 2 years, and it kind of fizzled out a little bit. And I had a break from it. I've just not got back to it. But the idea of this podcast is to kind of have chats with industry leaders within the FM sector, whether it's hard services or kind of soft services, and just kind of discuss how they got into the industry, share their in a bid to basically inspire, hopefully, new generation, the new generation coming through to the sector, but those who are already in the sector, really. It's a brilliant, I love recruiting in it. It's a great industry and there's so many people in it from different walks of life, different backgrounds, where they came from. So before we go into it, as to how you got into the FM sector, Alistair, can you tell us who you work for now and what you do?
So I'm the founding director for a company called Integrated Estates Management, so IEM, and we're a hard services FM provider. 4 years into the journey, pretty much to the month. So 4 years
nice. In. Brilliant. And how's it going? How have those
Do you know
4
what?
years been?
Absolutely amazing. It's sometimes it's quite lonely, but absolutely majority of the time it's very fulfilling. Being an owner, I'd love to sit here and go, yeah, we did it because we had all the aspirations to really change the industry and bring something, all that good stuff as well. But mostly, beginning of COVID, no one had a job, so we said let's do this on our own. And a couple of us got together from a previous company where I was, and then they said we'll go with you, and went into FM. So yeah,
brilliant. And how was it? So you set up during COVID, right? During the pandemic.
That's right, June 2020. So
and
very early.
How was that? Because you always hear about people setting up businesses during tough times and almost people using reasons as the tough times not to set up. But I guess there's never a right time, is there? Do you think it would have been easier setting up in kind of better times?
Do you know what? I often think about that. I think the fact that we had no expectations, it gave us that buffer to actually be able to have those Panama moments during the thought process before we actually executed. So when we came out of the box, we weren't really against the day-to-day rush of business because everything had stopped. Mm-hmm. So it gave us a really good opportunity to real hone and say, what do we want to do and how do we want to make it work? So I would say it's absolutely the best time. Obviously, cannot take away how, it was a very bad time for a lot of people. But on a personal level, some amazing things happened. So
Yeah, no, brilliant. No, it was a bit of a mental time. It seems so long ago now. It's only 4 years, but it seems, a lifetime ago where we were having to 2 meters apart, and it's mental. Everyone's just scrappy to get on the tube nowadays on the commute. There's no kind of like, you go first and whatever else. There's no, the politeness is gone. It's
definitely back to normal, especially in town.
I know, so, completely. Cool. So listen, you've had before going through your kind of your FM career, you've had 2 careers, right? Because you started out in the army.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about your kind of time in the army and then kind of how you transitioned over into FM and maintenance.
So both actually relatively within the same discipline area. And what do I mean by that? Engineering. So joined the army at a very young age, literally just tipped 16. And joined as a junior soldier as an aircraft engineer. So I did something called the Army Apprenticeship at the time. I don't think they have it in the same guise anymore. It was 2 years of intense engineering training, obviously to work with aircraft. So it was avionics, it was maths, it was all the different disciplines and trades that you would possibly need. And at the same time, after finishing those lessons, you're going for an 8-mile run with a log on your back. So there was all the military elements around that as well. So that was really good, but ultimately set me up extremely well for the field army. And then just had a really great and varied career. I often say that I got to visit some amazing countries, but not the kind of place you'd take your families to
Yeah.
over those years. And it was kind of split into two halves at the time, and actually probably goes parallel with my career. So the first 9 years, one way through the ranks, ended up to be a sergeant, so a team leader attached to a naval marine unit at the time, actually. But that was physically working on aircraft. Although when I look back on it, I didn't do much time doing that. I tended to go and do other stuff that looked a bit cooler over there. And that was the mid '90s, when it was about adventurous training. Every other year you were back in Bosnia and obviously Kosovo and stuff like that, which wasn't great. But yeah, a very different army. And then it all kind of changed in 2001, as we're all aware, and then became very kinetic off the back of that, and the tours became intense. But at the same time, somehow someone recommended me to get my commission, so I then got shipped off to Sandhurst, started my entire career again, and came out as an officer. Actually, interestingly, when I say how quick that was, I knew I was going to go to Sandhurst, but I still went to Iraq for the 2003 for the initial Telic 1 ground war. I was attached to the Americans, so 21 days later, we literally rolled into Baghdad, and then the next day I'm flying home to go up the gates of Sandhurst with all the new recruits, and that was quite interesting. I thought they thought I was a part of the directing staff or training staff rather than an officer recruit at the time. But started my career again, and then did a bit of stuff on armour, did a bit of stuff here, there, and everywhere. Obviously, Afghan and Iraq was quite intense at those times, and then finished up my last job back in aviation. So back with the aircraft that I love. So yeah, there you go. Snapshot of 14 years.
No, nice. So how many years, sorry, was that in total?
So 14 in total.
14 in total. And then, so when you sort of left the army, did you know about the FM sector? Did you know that it existed, or that's what you wanted to do, or how did you kind of drop into it from after leaving the army?
Didn't have a clue about FM, which is probably the biggest problem. We'll definitely get onto that in a minute on how we start to resolve that. But no, didn't have a clue about FM. But what I very quickly realised is it's such an easy transition from the military, and whatever you're doing. I was in an engineering role, so it's probably seemed even more, let's say, aligned. But from any role in the military to come across to FM, it's such an easy transition. So when people say, "How was your transition?" It was so smooth. I literally hung up my uniform on the Friday, and I was on HMS Ocean at the time, and then I was in Gatwick Airport on the Monday morning, and I was greeted literally in the first couple of days. So my old Sergeant Major was there. Then there was my two up was an ex-infanteer. So straight away I'm speaking the same language. So and the day to day, it's just getting done. So we're well used to that in the military.
Yeah. So it's like being home from home for you then, when you went to Gatwick to the first job.
It was. I think I've always said putting down the bullets and bombs and picking up a spreadsheet is something that we don't really engage with in the military. And obviously, as you're well aware, in facilities management or any element of business, numbers and that just data is critical. But everything else was already in place. So it was a very smooth transition. And but interestingly, you say about facilities management. The reason I went for the role was it had a very engineering taint to it. But then, as you get into it, I used to call myself an operations manager, and then in future life, actually, operations director. I was kind of always moved away from saying facilities. It always felt a bit fluffy. Didn't really have. It wasn't a mature industry. But now, I'm fully up there saying yes, facilities manager, absolutely.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think it kind of, I think when people, you tell them that you are recruited within facilities, I think the first thing they always say is, facilities, do they just kind of, do they order the stationery? Are they just like the office manager? Like you say, the fluffy stuff around it, not the kind of the behind the scenes, the hard services. And now there's so much more to it in terms of kind of like, the customer service element and the kind of, I guess kind of the journey of the staff of the officers that you're looking after, of the people that you're looking after that are in. So just going back to the army, when you kind of when you left, how does it work when you leave the army? Because obviously you're going to go into civilian life, into a new career. Are they presented to you kind of before you leave? Do you have meetings with kind of like careers people, or do you kind of have to do your own research and kind of go out and see? So how does that work?
So what they've got, the normal transition route is when you sign off, retire, whatever the reason for leaving is, you have a circa a year to do, and don't quote me on the timings, but circa a year to meet with. There's an organisation called the CTP, so they're career transition partners, and they take you through that journey and give you that guidance, whether it's CV writing, etc., etc. I'm not going to get into the whys and wherehouses. There's a lot of bad press and then some okay press about that element. And there's always more you can do, right, on that journey. But really what they're trying to do is empower yourself to go out there and get it done. Now, for myself, I didn't actually take that route. I literally said, I'm leaving. I've got my own destiny. I know what I want to do. And then did that all myself. So it's relatively short and sharp for myself. I didn't go through that transition element. Sometimes, and this is my impetuousness with most things in life, I probably should have done that and taken that moment to recalibrate and let's say decompress, but I didn't. I dived straight into it. So it's worked for me, but I'd always recommend to anyone leaving the military, definitely use that opportunity, that transition opportunity to just go out there, see what other businesses are doing, do a bit of work experience. And the FM industry is definitely a sector where you can do that with relative ease.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, we kind of, obviously I've recruited within FM and maintenance since 2002. And the amount of kind of, we recruit from engineers on the ground through to supervisors and management. And it's just a brilliant industry if you are ex-military to come into. Like you say, the transition is pretty, should be pretty smooth. And then you can carve out a really decent career if that's what you want to do, and kind of become management and move up the ranks. And it's it's brilliant. Do many people in the army,
I think
in the forces, kind of? Sorry, go on, carry on.
So I was going to allude to the and kind of dive in with a bit of a plug there for something that a few of us got together a couple of years ago now, actually, and said, look, wouldn't it be great working with our professional body, the IWFM, if there was a veterans contingent, a community within that. And actually, it's such a no-brainer in the fact that you've got circa 16,000 service leavers a year from all three services, and no one knows about FM. And this is a small element of the rest of the world, so the rest of society, where they don't really know what FM is either. No one goes out of school and goes, I want to go into FM. But how do we change that? So the IWFM supported us and actually changed the whole constitution as well to move away from something called SIGs, so the special interest groups, and now they've set up professional network groups, and we were the lead on that. So we had a launch event a couple of months ago now in London, extremely well turned out from the industry, and the plan is 4 work streams, but the 2 core ones are working with the CTP, the air stations and naval ships, etc., so that when serving personnel are leaving or transitioning, they know that FM's there, and it's a great way to go. And then attached to that as well, once you're a veteran in the industry, there's actually a community there. And on the committee that we've got everything from the big boys, Mighty, Sodexo, ISS, all the way through to the SMEs like ourselves, and then even some one-man bands as well. So it's really well represented, and it's a watch this space as that grows and goes further as well. So,
brilliant! That's really good to hear. Because you also, I was going to say, what else do you do with veterans? Because I remember you were chatting the other day. You were just starting something new, were you?
Yeah. So there's been a few things, and we always believe in giving back as a business. So in the early days,
Yeah.
when we started, we said actually we want to set up and work with a charity from kind of day one, week one, and we've done we worked with 3 years with a charity called Care After Combat, and that was looking after
Hmm.
veterans in the criminal justice system. So that was mentoring, giving them purpose again. That kind of yeah, just that support, that mentorship, and there's nothing like a veteran from any era, any generation, any service. Get them in a room together, they can just talk.
Hmm.
There's an engagement there naturally straight away,
Hmm.
and so we use that natural affinity to work with these guys and girls in the criminal justice system to help with that transition. And the statistics are amazing. I mean, and again, don't quote me on the exact details, but 80% of guys and girls coming out of the criminal justice system usually reoffend. Is the general statistic. Care After Combat have
Yeah.
completely flipped that the other way. So that's quite amazing. But so I'm still an ambassador with them. But at the same time, from a business point of view, we're keeping a governance every 3 years. We look at a new charity to work with. So we're working at the moment, and we've just signed
Hmm.
up to fully support Scotty's Little Soldiers. Now, that's not my own private
Hmm.
militia as much as I'd like it. It was set up by a very courageous lady called Nikki Scott. And unfortunately, her husband, Lee, passed away in Afghan and left her and her children. And what she very quickly realized
Hmm.
is her children had, there was no support. How do those bereaved children of military families, how are they looked after? What's there for them? So she started on this journey, and it's going great
Yeah.
guns now. It's as simple as all those children get a present every year on their birthday. They have away day breaks. There's a real community around it, and it gives light people to talk to as well in that group. So their aspiration is they want to be looking after 1,000 children in the next couple of years, and that's an aspiration from a point of course, they don't want children to be bereaved. That's absolutely the wrong way around. But because there is a need for it, they want to be supporting those children. So we're running about 650 at the moment that they're looking
Mm.
after. So that we're there just to support, fly the flag, and what is an absolute great slam dunk cause that everyone can get behind. Really promote it. So
Yeah.
that's our big thing at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
And
fantastic.
then
Brilliant.
actually last last but not least, and I shouldn't forget about this one, I've been invited, or were invited a couple of months ago to the board of a new thing, and the launch event is actually this evening in Gosport for Veterans-Can.
Hmm.
So that is around changing changing the view on veterans. There's some great charities out there supporting the guys and girls that haven't
Mm.
done so well or in need of that through the obvious position, but that's definitely not the whole of us from a veterans community. And there's a lot of veterans out there that are just doing some amazing things and adding real value to business, industry, setting up their own businesses, supporting other corporations, etc., etc. So Veterans Can is about how do we support and demonstrate that veterans can do anything. And there's loads of other stuff in that I'm more than happy to talk about, whether now or a later time. But yeah, launch event this evening in Gosport. So watch this space.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, you do loads around that, and I think it's really important to kind of to kind of also help the industry kind of thrive and promote it. I feel like ever since I joined the industry or recruited in the industry in 2002, I was told at that point that there's a lack of engineers, there's a lack of staff, there's a lack of good engineers
Mm.
out there, and that continues to this day. I mean, it's 22 years later, we're still talking about this lack of there's a skills shortage, and I
Yep.
don't know if it's when that shortage will kind of will shrink, because I know that apprenticeships did stop for a good stint. And I think now lots of service providers and companies are starting those apprenticeships back up again, which is great. But I think there's still that massive gap, especially for us. We see that the mechanical engineers are very, very few and far between. I think it feels like the best mechanical engineers are kind of aged late 40s up to 70. Do you know what I mean? And older,
Yep.
and everybody in between. I think in the they feel non-existent in their 20s and 30s at the minute. Mechanical, everybody coming through is kind of electrical, and even then, there's a very few people that are doing apprenticeships. It's all kind of paperwork, go to college, or not even college, go to get the city and guilds. There's a million and one different types. Very confusing as well, I think, for people who go to city and guilds. They feel they're coming out with, they do a course, they think they're fully qualified commercial electricians, but they're not, because it says part 3 on the certificate. And it's, I don't know, city and guilds make it a bit confusing for people, I think. And then they come to us and say, I've got my tickets, I've got my part 3, but they don't. And I think, but yeah, I mean, do you guys run apprenticeship schemes within your business yet, or is it kind of too early stages for that?
So apprenticeships, massively behind it, obviously being an apprentice myself through the military. Look, where we are, we and I'll go into the model of our business and bore you to tears with that in a minute, but we don't actually employ any of our own engineers. We work with various partners across UK and Ireland to deliver. But actually, one thing we're looking at is, now we're at the size where, with our apprenticeship levy numbers being drawn on, how can we deploy that elsewhere? So actually, can we, going back to the IWFM Veterans and FM team, how could we potentially take that funding there and then implement it into other service levers? For example, not quite sure on the mechanics, but that's something we're working on. But I think you're absolutely right. Training from an early age. We can get into the whys and warehouses. It was always better in my day, and we knew how to fix things and all that kind of stuff, and that's been going on for generations. But I think you're absolutely right. That skilled engineer technician just doesn't naturally gravitate as a job that people want when they leave schooling or college or university. And I can attest to that. My 3 children don't want to touch it at all. They want to go marketing and sales and consultancy and all that good stuff. But the kind of getting your hands dirty and working things out just doesn't appear to naturally come across. Nothing against what my kids are doing. They're doing amazing stuff, but it doesn't naturally resonate there. But yeah, I think training in general, the skills gap, it's always been there. I think it will continue to be there. I think what we have to do is, if everyone does their part and just helps upskill their team in whatever they're doing. So we've actually launched at IEM a kind of a university, an employee university. So actually any employees can get these other training, one, to help them with the job. But actually interesting, when we set up, we said, look, not everyone's going to be with us forever. And we want the team to feel empowered that they can come to us and say what they want to do in future life. And that may change, what their aspirations are. And then we can help them. So if someone comes to us and says, I want to go and work in Italy being an artist, how can we help them achieve that? Rather than saying, you're dead to us, you're no longer in the business. And I think that's going to prove its worth over time. And well, it's showing at the moment we've had 0 retention loss in the 4 years, which is quite remarkable, especially from that, everything from the help desk function to the project manager's side. So yeah, absolutely believe in training, supporting, and if everyone did that across all elements of the industry, I think we'd have a bloody good shot at removing or resolving the skills issues that are out there.
Yeah. No, I massively agree with that. I think it's about kind of putting a bit back, isn't it, as to what you're taking out, I think, and just kind of repaying the favour almost, as to if you were an apprentice once upon a time, to kind of try and mentor people and take people on yourself. So, but so cool. So just going back to your career, you left the army, went to Gatwick. What have been your highlights within your FM career, aside of setting up IEM now? The journey in between, what would you say have been the highlights, the highs and lows, shall we say?
Yeah. Look, I've been an incredibly lucky boy through whether it was my time in the military or even leaving since then. So a kind of quick run through snapshot. So Gatwick Airport, going good guns. Plan was to stay there for quite a while. It's near home with the family. Have some of that downtime. It's no one's ever going to move an airport. And then 12 months later, end up being part of the team to sell an airport. So that was quite interesting. And that was all part of the Competitions Commission, moved from BAA to obviously its new owners now. The interesting thing in that journey was, which really then made me double down on facilities management, is the marketeers, the sales, all the advertising. Actually, the new buyers weren't bothered about that. They were bothered about the asset value, the condition of the assets, the depreciation value, all of that stuff. That very quickly I went from one, relatively low down on the table in the boardroom to front and center, leading that charge on how do we get the best asset value for the sale. So went from there, did a bit of time on engineering across BAA for a few months, but then I was headhunted to go to a trading company in the city, which I thought that's brilliant. Imagine Wolf of Wall Street on heat. It was amazing times there. Based in London initially, and then very quickly the trading company grew and grew and grew, and I was building offices all over the world. I think been 12 in total, so that's set up offices, data centers, and everything. So I did so many months in Hong Kong, and I'll be flying over to Chicago, and then out to Stockholm, and then Paris, and it was all great stuff.
Brilliant.
And I thought I was going to be in a bit of trouble with my wife. Actually, I thought Julie might say, well, you're off here, there, and everywhere again. That's not what I signed up to. And the one takeaway from it was that she said, well, actually, I know you're relatively safe when you go into these countries. So she was a lot more relaxed about it than I thought. So, that was great times. That was really good.
That sounds brilliant. Yeah, I mean, the fact that you got to travel with that position. How many years were you with them?
So I was with Liquid for, here we go, I reckon 4 years. Yeah, 4 years. And
Yeah.
I think the biggest takeaway was still doing the same thing in all these different countries, but it was more how all the different countries operate and the culture and the way people work. For example, trying to open an office in Paris in July just doesn't happen because everyone's on holiday for that end of July, August period. So we kind of did nothing for 6 weeks, which was very frustrating. Whereas Stockholm, very pragmatic and do things. Chicago, unless you know the right people and have that engagement with them, nothing happens in those buildings, which is all the Teamsters unions and everything. And then right through to Hong Kong, you can make a deal and it will happen instantaneously. So it's just understanding those local ways of working and how to make things happen, which is that was definitely the biggest takeaway, the best takeaway I had during that time there. So and then that was really good. Got us to a place where it's self-fulfilling, and then I kind of realised that my MO, my way of working, was to get things into a good place, and it could be normal running. I think normal running day to day doesn't excite me. I think at that point I realised going in and doing that change, doing that enhancement to a business or a department or whatever it is, was what really flicked my switch. So then went to a company called ICI Accidental, did 6 years there, worked everything from Slough paint manufacturing, so one of our products was Dulux, and then right through to looking after manufacturing sites across Europe and stores as well. So had an amazing time there as well. Learned an awful lot. Again, all of those times just learning new things, how to go to market, how to engage, how to manage, and that was a really enjoyable.
Brilliant, excellent. So how would you say since you joined Gatwick and that was your first role within FM, how has the industry changed over the course of those kind of 20 or so years, would you say?
That's an interesting one. So obviously you probably guessed from that Gatwick, Liquid Capital, ICI, I was the client. So relatively immune from, let's say, the inner workings of the delivery element. I just got it delivered, and the hardest thing we had to do was when it came up to tender periods, which I'm not a massive fan of tenders. I think they're relatively, and that's a different discussion, but slanted towards who's got the big bucks who can pay for the marketeers to pull the decks together. But what would I say? I would say FM is more mature now. It's realised as being a more mature business. it's realised as a necessity within business. I think before it was kind of the department that were thrown in the basement, um, down there in the old caretaker's office, and that's how it was viewed. Um, Now
Yeah.
they've definitely got a seat at the table, and I saw that the more the career went on, but also more so service delivery side, how much of an impact these FM has on the businesses. I think the big coming of age moment was definitely COVID, when all of a sudden it was the FM and estate team that were running around still making things happen and coming up with solutions how to get people in the office, out the office, supported from home working. So I think that's done great guns. I think what we need to do though as an industry is capitalize on that, keep that momentum, and keep
Yeah.
demonstrating the really good value added elements. It's not just about pot plants cleaning leaky loos. It's about actually how can we add value to your business? How can we support that bottom line by capital allocating properly, or doing things in a smarter way, that allow the business to get the best from their buildings. So I think a maturity that's grown with myself, and more of an understanding across the business as well. But as we spoke about earlier, it still hasn't got rid of the skills issue or resolved that. And definitely within the industry, that race to the bottom still seems to be the daily grind of constantly lowballing to not deliver and then go from there. And I'm not saying any names, no pack drill or anything like that. It's just a reality of the industry.
Do you think that will change?
I think it will only change when the clients want it to change. What do I
Yeah.
mean by that? Having been the client, when there's struggles on the business, financially, whatever headwinds are incoming, the natural default is to go, all right, facilities, how can you remove some of your services to save money? But at the same time, we don't want to remove any service delivery or feel of the building. And when we're going for tenders, very few and far people, even when they say it's all the other good stuff that's in tenders are first and foremost. I don't care what anyone says. The cost still comes. It still comes down to the cost. All the other value elements, they play their part, but if you haven't got a good cost number, you're not in the game. So, and the problem is, if the cost is being set by pre-evaluations from previous tenders people have done, etc. So we've got a long way to go to remove the thought process of how we sell our services to the client, because people are going by preconceived ideas and what's happened previously. So to change that mindset, it's got to be led by the clients, and they're the ones who are going to have to stand up one day and say, actually, this is silly. We're giving a month to quote for £10 million worth of work, for example, with very limited data, and all this stuff doesn't help anything. So I could wax lyrical, probably with a bit more degree of detail on it, but as a general piece, I think the clients have to change the discussion and change the rhetoric.
Side. Yeah, no, that kind of makes sense. Is there anything that I mean, obviously you've been in the industry a while now. You enjoy it. You've set up your own business. Is there anything that you kind of that you don't like about the FM industry that you wish would change, or could it change even?
I think, why did I set up IEM? And then hopefully that might have to answer the question. If it doesn't, then we'll come back. So apart from the fact that if IEM didn't happen, we wouldn't be able to pay the mortgage, etc., etc. But one of the driving pieces was, as the client, property director, FM director, whatever it is, I was sick and tired of the Christmas event or the summer event for the businesses being on the furthest table away with the team, and then getting heckled when the AC doesn't work, or the microphone doesn't work, or the speaker, whatever it is. And then the marketeers and the sales guys and girls are winning all the awards. How do I support the client so actually they're the ones winning the awards? And the only way I can do that is by making them look good, and by giving them the information that allows them to demonstrate all the good stuff that's happening in their department, across their estates that they're looking after. So that's the big thing for me. The minute that the clients that we work with, and in general, even if we don't work with them, start getting recognized internally in their own businesses, then I think we're onto a winner. And that's the thing that does frustrate me at times.
Yeah, yeah. Excellent. Cool. And I guess one final question then before we close off is what advice would you give to anybody who's looking to enter the industry now, or is just kind of starting out, or what advice would you give to your younger self when you were kind of just entering in the industry that would be useful?
Wow, that's a hard one, actually. What would I do differently? Slash, what would I suggest? Um, I think anything in life, that this is just a general. I think just always be yourself. Don't try and be somebody else. So that's number one.
Yeah,
That's one of the big
yeah,
takeaways. When it comes to the industry, there's a lot of it's massive. It's there's
yeah,
things within facilities management that you wouldn't even think twice about, or naturally pigeonhole into the industry. What I say is if you're a school leaver, university, apprentice, anything like that, take the opportunity to do work experience. And actually, as a service leaver
mm-hmm.
as well, get out there. There's lots of businesses that will take you on and give you that work experience esque element. Also,
Mm-hmm.
don't be worried if you get into facilities management and aren't particularly comfortable with the first thing you're doing, whether it's client side or delivery side, whether it's hard services, soft services, whether so many facets to it.
Mm-hmm.
Once you're in the industry, don't be afraid to jump to another area of the industry, and it's like a
Yeah,
whole new
yeah,
world. But got that tick in the box, that understanding of the general mechanics of how things work when you come
mm-hmm.
to looking after buildings and estates,
Mm-hmm.
that hold you in such a high position when they come to people like yourself and go, look, I've done this and this and this in soft services. Now I want to go and do X, Y, and Z in hard services, or I want to go from being on the client side to go to a delivery company. You can probably answer it better, but I'd imagine that holds a lot more weight than trying to be actually
Yeah,
pinpoint specific, and go from there. So yeah, I'd just say get involved,
yeah.
see what it's all about. You'll never have a dull day, and yeah, just be yourself.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I think it's really important to try and get that kind of try and get as much exposure to kind of the whole spectrum as you can within the industry. So if you're if you're an engineer, it's definitely worth trying going to manage and deliver soft services if you become a manager, and not just kind of stick to hard services. And on the other side, if you're kind of more, if you came through front of house or the cleaning sector and you became more of soft services managers, to try and cross over and get the experience into delivering into hard services, because then you've got that. Because I think it's very easy for people just to stay on track doing just soft services or just hard services, but if you can be that rounded individual who kind of has delivered both and understands both, I mean, you don't have to be a qualified engineer to at least be able to ask the right questions about hard services and engineering and maintenance, and recognize what's in the plant room. It's, you got to, I think you've definitely got to put yourself out there, and you become more employable, more attractive to future businesses, by doing that. And I think that there's not enough people who are crossing over. I feel they could do more. I think companies need to encourage it more as well, actually, because I think they're very good at kind of, right, you're an engineer, you deliver you're an engineering manager, you deliver just the hard services. That's you. We're going to get someone into. It's good to cross over, work together, learn from each other. So everyone just develops. It's a win-win situation, then, I reckon.
And I
Yeah,
think one other
yeah.
last point which just came to me, but has been probably the biggest let's say change in how I've gone about business since setting up IEM, which is networking. Um,
Mm,
Never used to network at all, especially when I was on client side, because you're the one that gets hounded all the time. But I'd recommend even that, build that network. It's so powerful.
yeah,
We've won
yeah,
clients off the back of networking, or somebody knows and they need support on something. The
yeah,
friends we've made, the opportunities that have been given to you, or myself, and FM is really good at networking. Um, And that's
Yeah,
a great way
yeah,
to expose yourself to things you never even thought of. So yeah, massive supporter of networking, and just get yourself out there and do it.
yeah. Brilliant. And one last thing, what's your take on qualifications? Like doing additional kind of the extra quals, whether it's kind of IOSH or NEBOSH or the kind of the IWFM quals. Do you think if someone coming through, it's worth doing those kind of early doors, or wait until you've got some work experience and then doing them, or is it worth it at all? Perhaps I don't know. What's your take on that?
I think it definitely worth it because it gives you another, let's say, tool in your arsenal. So IOSH, NEBOSH, I was lucky enough to do both of those actually first when I came into the
Yeah,
industry. Would I say I've used though? Probably more so client side. Uh, yeah, but I think I probably use the IWFM training a lot more, and something
yeah,
we're working with heavily with all of our team. So join IEM, you go on the help desk, you get the opportunity to go through your level 3, level 4, whatever fits kind of where you are on your journey into FM. We highly
hmm
recommend that, so that even if you're a help desk operator, account manager, whatever it is, you've got a full understanding of what else is out there, what the terminology is, what the phraseology is, the nuances around facilities management. So yeah, definitely get yourself on those courses. They're not too expensive. Yes, it's time and effort, but you only get out what you
hmm
put into it, right? So yeah,
yeah, it's true.
definitely recommend doing the IWFM courses. And then IOSH or NEBOSH, it depends if you're really going to focus on that health and safety route, in which case definitely NEBOSH. As a general rounded element, the IOSH piece is definitely one to have in your arsenal. Yeah.
Nice one, brilliant. Well, we'll leave it there. And listen, Alistair, I appreciate you taking the time today to do this. And yeah, we'll
That's
listen.
it.
We'll catch up soon. Best of luck with IEM moving forward. Hope it goes well. And
Thank you.
yeah, have a great day. Take care.
We'll speak soon. Thank you very much.